Yo, what's going on, snipers, and welcome back to Edmonton Oilers Throwback 2010 franchise mode here in NHL 25. So in last episode, if you did not catch it, we had the draft and re-sign stage, and it was quite actually a pretty good draft for us. We did draft ourselves a lot of solid prospects that are going to be used probably in the future once this team starts to lose people. So some of the guys that we drafted, for instance, as you can see, this Bemstrom guy, 75 overall, medium top 6 at 18. I think this guy could be a pretty solid penalty kill option down the road, so excited to see if he ends up developing to being something good. He's already got some really good attributes. I was thinking of signing him for the AHL, but I think maybe 1 year unsigned is not a bad idea. There is room in the minors, so maybe I'll look into signing him at the start of the season if he's still a really good overall, and if there's actually good enough room there where he could get good playing time. So there's a chance he could get signed still. We also drafted this Bork guy who's got low elite potential. I think there was a couple other dudes too, like I think Lightnin's not that bad. He's got kind of a lower bit potential, but he's got obviously a solid overall for his age. There's guys like Olofsson, 63 overall, 18 medium top 4. I think that's pretty solid. Houghton could be something decent. Jackman is a decent steal. I mean, he's already 19, but he's a 62 overall, so maybe he develops into being something. But in general, we just drafted ourselves a ton of solid prospects, and yeah, I'm just excited to see how they end up developing and if they end up making his team at some point in time. Now, there is one of them that we already signed for the AHL, which I didn't even show you guys, but I'm very excited for him, and that is Alto, who's a 72 overall, 17-year-old at medium elite potential. This guy was drafted 3rd round, and I think there was a chance that he could have went even later, but we took him early, and this guy's looking pretty damn insane. So very, very excited to see how this guy develops. He could end up becoming a future top 6 guy for us for sure, or even maybe at best, like, he could end up being one of our better players on this roster in general if he gets a lot of growth. But he's definitely going to be playing on the top line in the AHL. Like I said, there is a chance that Bemstrom gets signed, so both of them might be competing a little bit, but at least we're going to have a lot of good prospects in our AHL team for years to come, which is very, very exciting. So yeah, excited to see how those guys develop, like I said, and see if they end up growing into what they have as their potentials or not. So anyways, with that said, let's get in your guys' comments now, see what you guys have to say about last episode, and then we will get into free agency and probably starting up the 2016-17 season, or maybe we'll actually just look at teams' lines and kind of just use this as a free agency episode only, and next season we might start in the next episode instead. So the first comment is from Sound Otaku. It says, "Can't say I'm a fan of the Jakumov's contract. You shouldn't have given him a full no movement clause in the final years, because I'm willing to bet those high overall prospects you just drafted make the NHL roster the season after next. Plus, you could probably have qualified Tuomainen and traded his rights to get more picks. Keeping him scratched is going to stunt his development." And on the front first of Tuomainen, I don't think he's actually scratched right now, because I didn't give the other goaltender in the system a contract yet, which is McClement. I could leave McClement unsigned for 1 more year, so I think it's okay to basically just leave him unsigned for 1 more year. He'll be above a 70, and then he could come in and replace Tuomainen. I don't know if he would actually jump right to the AHL like you'd think so, but then also he plays in the OHL, so maybe he doesn't. So I think obviously right now, yeah, we'll still run Tuomainen and Dorsett in the AHL, but McClement definitely will probably be hitting to see the AHL as early as not necessarily this upcoming season, but the season afterwards. And then we could probably think about getting rid of McClement, or not McClement, Tuomainen's rights, because I believe he'd be a pending RFA or UFA at the end of the season. I'm not too sure exactly, but we could definitely trade him away and hopefully capitalize on his value a little bit. Also, he was saying about the Jakumov's contract, I don't think it's a terrible contract, because I think he's still going to be one of our best players for a while. There is guys like Jordan Eberle who are also pending UFA who I could honestly let go of at the end of the season. Eberle's been a bit disappointing in terms of his goal scoring ability, which is the main reason he's in the top 6. He's a sniper, but he has not scored a 30-goal season at this point in time. So there is a chance, even though he's been one of our better offensive producers in general, we might have to look for more of a pure goal scorer for that top 6. And Jakumov's right now is that kind of top 6 player, as you can see with his goal scoring ability. 20 goals this season, not super great, but 34 the year before, so at least he's hit 30. So I think if he's getting a little bit of an elevated role after we get rid of Eberle, I don't think it's a huge issue. But for right now, it's a nice little trial run contract. And that no movement clause obviously kicks in not this upcoming season, but the season afterwards, or actually 2 years from now, I guess technically. So it's not really that bad, but obviously right now, we could probably utilize him well. Obviously, it's going to suck if Lahti or whatever is, or no, it wasn't Lahti. What was the guy's name again in Finland that we just drafted? Alto. If Alto develops into being good enough to replace Jakumovs, that's not a bad thing. We could always use Jakumovs as a right winger, Alto as a left winger. It's not a huge issue, I don't think, personally, as long as Eberle leaves this team potentially as well. Like I said, I don't know how long Eberle is going to be here for. I know he's the thumbnail athlete again, but I do need more goal scoring out of him, so I guess it depends on how he does this upcoming season, but he is a pending UFA and he might demand a lot of money in next year's offseason. The next comment is from Max Effort, who says, possibly bring Panarin in, and I don't know about bringing in somebody like Artemi Panarin. I think his trade value might be a bit too high. Obviously, also, we have a lot of good prospects. We just literally drafted a good left winger that's got elite potential, so I don't really think bringing in Panarin makes much sense for this team. Obviously, I'd like to promote a lot of the younger guys in the system as well if I possibly can. So, like, if we went to Atlanta right now, who does not have a lot of cap space and can't re-sign Panarin, I think the value would just be a bit too high for us. Like, it would cost a second and third in Barshy, which isn't actually as bad as I was anticipating, but Panarin does need a contract, which would probably cost a lot of money. And like I said, we do have a decent chunk of left wingers already on this team, so I just don't think it's something I could really do at this point. Obviously, in the future, maybe we could look into somebody like Panarin if we need more forwards or something like that. But I think with our prospect pool right now, I'd probably rather just let Atlanta deal with Panarin, and maybe they trade him away at some point, or maybe they decide to get him back again if they actually do free up some cap space, which they probably can do if they offload somebody like Toby Enstrom or not. And the last and final comment is from Tyler G, 1994, who says, Alto is going to be the steal of the draft, the fantastic Finn. And yeah, I'd say so as well. He definitely looks really good. Like, I wasn't expecting him to be in the 70 overall range. I was expecting him to maybe be like a 60-something that was like 3 years out. But he's literally probably almost NHL ready out of the gate, which is insane. Like, he's definitely going to tear up the AHL, I think, in his first year. And then next year, he could be on our third line by next season, which is very exciting. Alright, so with that said, I think we also still have to make some trades before we get to actually simulating through free agency. Like, I don't think there's really much we need to actually sign, because we do have some RFAs still holding out a little bit, I think, if I remember right. Maybe not, actually. No, we have no RFAs at the moment, but we don't really need to sign that much in terms of free agency. Like, Fall, Kalinka, Zherdev, Metropolis should be in our lineup. There's a chance that Mackey jumps up. Safronov could be still used as a depth defenseman. And even Moss could potentially jump up as a defenseman. Same with like guys like Parayko. So I think the defensive core will probably just stay the way it is right now, even though it is a little bit weaker than it was last year without Chris Russell on it and Jeff Petrie. And then goaltending will obviously stay the same as well. And then from a forward perspective, I think we need to make some adjustments on it a little bit. So we'll probably look to make a small adjustment, but not a huge one, because there is guys that are competing for roster spots in the bottom six, including Val Nikushkin, which I would like to get Nikushkin playing. Obviously, Yakupov could probably still play, but we might have to think about moving out from somebody like Brock McGinn, who's actually listed as a fourth liner, and I don't really know if I want to use him as a healthy scratch. I mean, I could use Barchi maybe instead as a scratch. But it's tough to say. So maybe we'll keep the team the exact same for now. And if we have too many players, we'll obviously make an adjustment at the start of the season rather than right now. So I think we aren't going to make any adjustments. We're not going to bring in any new players, any new faces to this team. And I think I actually am going to already go ahead and sign that Bemstrom guy for the AHL. I know I was thinking about waiting until the start of the season, but I think we need more bodies in the AHL, so might as well get him signed up. Do we need more defensemen in the AHL? That's one question I have, actually. Because we got 4 there, 5, 6, 7. And then probably Parayko would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And we probably have 6 with a 7th in Esposito potentially. So, yeah, I think we're good. So, yeah, I don't think we're going to sign anything this offseason. I'm just more interested, I guess, at this point on what the AI decides to sign. So, I think we don't need to do anything else, probably. Unless we do need more coaches, which I do not remember if we needed a coach. Oh yeah, we needed a new AHL head coach, but that's probably it. So let's just look for a new AHL head coach for the time being. And that's going to be one thing we do at least this offseason. So is there anybody with a good teaching grade here that's all the way up in this? Yeah, maybe this coach. But let's just go for it because it's got a good teaching grade. So Frederick Ness will bring you in for the time being. I don't know how good you fit our team, but we're going to at least try you for now in that minor league spot. We already have all our scouts, so I think pretty much everything else is good. So we'll obviously go through the free agency portion of this episode, And we'll obviously take, I think, a look at the team's lines to start next season and also adjust our own lines. But I don't think we're going to actually start the 2016-17 season in this episode just because I'm kind of curious on what teams are looking like at this point. So we'll probably go up to the start of the regular season maybe, so go through the preseason in it. But I just want to see what teams are rocking for top lines and the second lines and all that type of thing. So with that said, let's advance to the end of the month and we will see what kind of signings happen at the end of this month. Hopefully there's some really big name signings. There was some okay free agents this year, so kind of interested on if there's anybody that goes to a random place that we weren't really expecting to. So let's go to the 31st, and like I said, we're not making any adjustments to our team because we could technically upgrade our team if we really wanted to, but at the same point, I kind of would rather just wait and see what our roster's looking like first and seeing if there's anybody that's an extra player that we don't really need that we can move on from, and that way we can kind of better think of some deals potentially for next episode if we have to make trades, that is. So that's the end of the month. Let's go to the free agency part and see what kind of signings happened. Hopefully we get some pretty big results. Let's also take a look if there's any off-season trades. Which off-season trades, there has been some trades, probably some guys getting signed in free agency and then traded away right away. So Dan Pye has been sent to Atlanta. So Atlanta didn't have the cap space, but they might have maybe freed up some cap space by moving Jersina to Anaheim. I'm not too sure on that. Aside from that, Artem Anisimov goes to Florida from Dallas. Wojtek Wolski got dealt already from Phoenix. He gets dealt to the Dallas Stars. Eric Christensen and Mike Santorelli going to Boston from Florida. Matt Fratton finds his way to Boston in a trade with Detroit. And that's it. So no big trades, but signing-wise, this should be interesting. So Florida has signed Olli Jokinen. So Olli Jokinen has returned to the Florida Panthers organization. So that's kind of neat. Good for him. David Clarkson signed with the Islanders. Hopefully he didn't get a crazy contract, but it's only 2 years, so it's not like the Toronto Maple Leafs contract that they gave him before, but that's pretty insane. Aside from that, any other big name signings? Obviously, I could name out all of these, but I prefer to use my voice for other things just in case. But any crazy signings? Halak goes to Philadelphia, so he leaves St. Louis and goes to the Flyers. That's not a bad pickup, I guess, for Philly. Gives them a goalie at least. Aside from that, what else we got here? Looking for big names. The Flyers also signed Tyler Ennis. So yeah, the Flyers are actually making some moves. Florida as well looks like it. They bring in Dawes and Latendresse. Minnesota brings in Blake Como. Robert Nilsson's now a Flame. Obviously he used to play for us. Scott Hannon to the Montreal Canadiens. Chris Phillips to Washington. Rocco Maltese and Islanders. Sergei Kostitsyn's a Wild. That sounds weird saying a Wild. And there's a guy with the last name Wild, of course, nearby. Picker to Buffalo. Hodgson to LA. Radko Gudas to San Jose. All right. Anything else? Pat Maroon to Pittsburgh, just so he could find a way to win a Stanley Cup already, probably. Michael Ryder ends up in Philadelphia. So yeah, Philly's definitely making a lot of offseason adjustments. Michael Grabner ends up with the Rangers. Carl Alsner to Vancouver. Spurgeon resigns with the Islanders. I think he was already with the Islanders still at this point. Aside from that, Michel Ouellet going back to Pittsburgh, where obviously he started his career. Upshaw to the Flames. Talbot to Montreal. Not really surprised that Max Talbot would be playing in Montreal. Darcy Kemper to Detroit. Anybody else interesting? I know there are some big names, so we got to obviously take a look at that. That's early into the free agency. God damn, we still have a lot of signings to go through in that first month of free agency. So Nick Cronwall ends up with the Coyotes. That's an interesting signing for them. Nick Cronwall is pretty old at this point, but he gets a 2-year deal. I don't know why the Yotes are adding necessarily, because I don't think they were super good, but it does help their defensive core a bit. Vatanen ends up in Chicago. Corey Schneider in Minnesota. Kunitz in Florida. Nathan Horton ends up with the San Jose Sharks. All right. Any other signs to bring up? Looking for the craziest names possible, if there is any. Christian Ehrhoff ends up in Colorado. Andrew McDonald to Carolina. Pavel Datsyuk ends up as a Boston Bruin. That's a very weird one. Obviously, I feel strange about him leaving Detroit, but him going to Boston, kind of an interesting place, because now they have both him and Bergeron, which means they have two very good defensive centers. And I don't know how good Datsyuk is at this point. I think he's dropped off a lot, but that's still two guys that can win a lot of faceoffs there in Boston. So Shout out to that guy. Ryan Smith left us and went to the Calgary Flames. Oh my goodness. So we let go of Ryan Smith. He didn't want to play in our organization anymore. Also, he would have been too expensive for his age, but he decides to sign a one-year deal with our rivals. And I know a lot of Oilers fans are going to be not liking to see that, him signing with the Calgary Flames. That's just disturbing. It's a good pickup for them, but it's just really weird. James Neal signs with the Coyotes as well. Anybody else? Boychuk going back to Boston. MacArthur to Dallas. Teddy Purcell to the Islanders. Varlamov ends up in Buffalo. Kind of a weird place for Varlamov. Anybody else? David Safar with the Islanders. Eric Johnson gets a 6-year deal with the Florida Panthers. Yeah, Florida's adding a lot of players this offseason, so they should be an interesting team to look at. Leonard to Phoenix again. Anybody else? Kreider in Carolina. Yannick Hansen in Toronto. Neuwirth in Atlanta. All right. A lot of random signings. Foligno in Anaheim. Scott Gomez stays with the Montreal Canadiens on a 2-year deal. Tomo Rutu ends up in Boston, so more grit for the Bruins. Stempniak signs with the Leafs. That's kind of funny, of course. What else we got here? Brendan Gallagher staying in Minnesota. Pacioretty in Nashville. Henrique is now a LA King. Anybody else interesting? Sean Horkoff to Washington, so he's still kicking around at this point. Reimer in Calgary. Rene Bourque in St. Louis. Adam Lowry going to Atlanta. That's actually realistic because obviously Atlanta at this point would be the Winnipeg Jets. So that's kind of cool. Brzgalov to Ottawa. Any other signings? Mason Raymond got a 5-year deal with the Wild. Damn. Muzzin, 4-year deal with Columbus. There's Danielson, our former goalie. Lucic gets a 1-year deal with the Montreal Canadiens. I don't know how Habs fans would feel about that, to be honest, but interesting. Chris Russell, our former defenseman, gets a 6-year deal in Philly, so shout out to Chris Russell for getting the bag after leaving us. Ryan Suter signs with Tampa on a 3-year deal. Radulov goes to Florida on a 4-year deal, so yeah, Florida's still loading up on prospects and veterans, I should say, actually, for that matter, a lot more. Brent Burns ends up in Columbus, so that's where Burns ends up. He's one of the big free agents. Tyler Bozak ends up in Detroit for 5 years. Morgan Riley still re-signing in Buffalo. And Kopitar did end up as a Toronto Maple Leaf on a 6-year deal, which is insane, which means he's going to be playing top line with Phil Kessel and all that, but that's a pretty substantial pickup there for the Leafs in this franchise mode. So let's continue to sim up to next season. Like I said, we'll definitely take a look at every team's lines because I'm kind of curious on what type of line combinations some of these teams are running. Like, for instance, what are the Leafs running? Like, are they running Kopitar playing with Kessel, or are they playing him on a different line? Let's also get rid of stuff on our trading block, because for now, we're not going to make any trades, but obviously, like I said, next episode, we could potentially offload some people if there's too many cooks in the kitchen, so to speak. So, like I said, I don't know if I want to have Val in the lineup next season, but he also might take away from Yakupov, so we got to think on those type of ideas, but let's just remove everything from these blocks so we don't get a single offer. And hopefully we get a lot of growth in the system because maybe that'll make our team look better than it currently does. Like I said, I could have went out and signed a veteran, but I would prefer just to maybe keep it the same for now and see if we actually need anything preferably, because I'd rather get that growth from within than via free agency or via trade right now. All right, so we should get a notification here shortly, and then we could set up our lines. There it is. Let's go and adjust these lines. So I guess we need a new captain this season. That's another thing, because Ryan Smith is gone. So who do you guys think should be the captain for the start of this 2016-17 season? Because I honestly have no idea which one I would choose. Also, Tuomainen is now listed as an NHL backup goaltender. He does go through waivers, though, so we probably wouldn't want to call him up at any point. But yeah, Tuomainen's probably in his last year in this organization. We could definitely trade him away and sign the other goalie to play in the AHL if you guys want me to. So he is under contract for this year, but I think he might be a pending UFA potentially. Maybe not at the end of this season, at the end of next season. Or maybe it is at the end of the season. I honestly don't know. Aside from that, in terms of our defense, let's see what we got here. We have Fulk, Kalinka, Zherdev. Moss is up to an 80. Damn, I was not expecting that growth from him. Mackey and Metropolitan. That actually looks pretty nice. So, Mackey I was expecting to make it. Metro was last season on our team. We need a depth defenseman. So, CC goes through waivers. So, probably CC would make the most sense since he does go through waivers. But he is only 22. There's also Colton Parayko, who's 22, as a depthy. And then there's also Corbin Dolan, who's 22, and only has medium 4 potential. Who the heck would I prioritize in this spot? Probably CC, because his potential's the worst. So yeah, let's call up CC as that depth defenseman. We'd be over the playable limit, so we need to send somebody down. But yeah, I think CC is going to be our depth defenseman for us this season. And the rest of these guys are obviously all going to be playing. But yeah, excited to see Moss in the lineup and Mackey this season. Like I said, Mackey could provide some good offense maybe on our second power play unit. Zherdev is an OFD though too, so we'll see where we end up playing a bunch of people. In terms of forwards, we have Toffoli, Eberle, Fata, Yakupov, and Nikushkin. A lot of good overalls there. Yakupov's actually an 82, so that's kind of impressive. We could probably play one of these guys as a left winger, and then Nikushkin could move up into a fourth line role, but he is listed actually as a fourth liner, so that might be an okay spot for him. Obviously, I don't know where Fata stays on the side. Yeah, we could definitely move somebody to a left side. Latti probably is going to be playing fourth or third line this season. I was expecting him to replace Ryan Smith, basically. One of these guys could be probably sent down. In Barchi or McGinn. McGinn is not the best defensively. Barchi isn't either. But you'd probably prefer to have a two-way forward on a bottom six option, so to speak. But here's somebody we're going to probably send down for now, is going to be Bjorn Schultz. Just for the time being. So we have a body get sent down. Alright, so then for centers we have Cameron, McKinnon, Jankomovs, Marcoux, and Jenner. So, yeah, we have a lot of good players on this team. Holden's almost very close to being ready too. He's a depth forward at this point. But we could wait one more season. He's got fantastic shooting categories. So, once he does get in, we probably want him at least on a third line. Also jumped up to a 75 already before making his AHL debut, and he's still only 17 years old. So, yeah, this guy is going to be making it maybe early as middle of the season this year. Like, he could be an 83 already at that point. Bemstrom. Yeah, it's looking good. The AHL team is going to be very strong again this season, too. So, shout out to them. Let's go best lines here and see who ends up getting scratched at the moment after we make all these adjustments. So, first line, we want to have Cameron, and we want to have Gus, and probably Toffoli. Second line, we want McKinnon with Jakumovs, and I guess Fata could jump into that top six. I mean, he's not an offensive guy by any stretch. I mean, 87 offensive awareness is actually pretty good. Last year, he had 28 points. Maybe a top six role is not a bad idea for him. Latti could move up. Jenner could move down. Let's get Yakupov actually maybe on that third line instead. Val could go up to that third line. And then we run something like this for the fourth line. Latti, Jenner, McGinn. Who's scratched on offense right now? Ooh, Eberle got scratched? God damn, I was not expecting Jordan Eberle to get scratched. Okay, so that actually will make things a little bit easier with readjusting these lines. Let's get Eberle in there. That's where I'm thinking Eberle might be gone from this team at the end of the year, but it's tough to say. It really is. We'll get Jankomovs on a left wing spot, I guess, for now. Fata can play either side, which is good. But that means Big Val would be playing fourth line minutes, which is probably not ideal. He looks like he'd be okay with that ice time, but he's more of an offensive guy. So at the moment, the scratches for forwards are Barchi and McGinn. McGinn's a fourth liner, Barchi's a depth forward. So we probably have to think about maybe trading McGinn because he's not a depth forward. I mean, we could also call up Schultz as a depth forward. So I think calling up Schultz as a depth forward and then maybe trading McGinn might be the play. That way we have people in their correct roles, to be honest. Because I don't want McGinn being scratched and complaining about his ice time. So I think for now, I'm going to call up the center in Schultz. We don't have a lot of centers in the AHL, which kind of sucks. But we are going to send down, for the time being, just because, or else he might lose morale. We'll send down Brock McGinn. And that way we have guys in the right spots and all that. So our NHL team in terms of forwards actually looks really good. We could also try playing McKinnon on the top line next to Cameron and stuff like that if we really want to. But I really like our top six. Our third line looks great. Fourth line looks good too. And then from a defensive standpoint, what do we got here? Our defensive core definitely looks a little bit on the weaker side of things than it did last year, obviously. But it should be good. That drags the chemistry down. Let's keep... we don't want Mackey then on that unit. I don't want any minuses, really. We are going to be having to take CC off this unit, though. Because CC is going to be a scratch. I want Zherdev in the lineup. Oh, boy. Yeah, we might have too many offensive defensemen unless I could find a place to move Mackey up, which doesn't really work. Mackey doesn't really fit this coach that well unless he's on the top pair, and same as Zherdev. They're both offensive defensemen right now, too. And then we have Falk, who's two-way, Helenka's DFD, Moss is a two-way, and Metro is a DFD. So if we hypothetically move Metro over here, move Mackey to play next to Metro, and if we move Moss up to play with Falk, and we go something like that, I mean, that could work, but it's still a -2 on that third pairing. So maybe we need to readjust the coaching staff. It's tough to say. But all these guys are pretty much listed as like top 6 defenders. Like, we don't actually have a lot of top 4s. So maybe we think about trading somebody for a vet. But I do want Mackey to be getting playing time. I want Zherdev getting playing time. But that might be too many OFDs right now. Because Zherdev should probably play top unit. But obviously he can't really play up there, or else the chemistry's not great either. Mostly everybody on our defensive core fits that top pairing only. So we might have to think about a defensive adjustment. And then from a goaltending perspective, Vasilevsky, Ruskovic, and then CC as the scratch. Like I said, we could play CC if we want to get rid of that minus, but who am I taking out of this lineup? There's nobody I would want to put out of this lineup. Falk, like I said, is our best defenseman right now. Signed for a 5-year deal. And then we have a lot of good young guys in the lineup right now too. So I don't really want to move out from any of these guys right now. So I don't really know. I don't really know what we do with that. But we'll probably keep it like that for the time being. Obviously, it could change in between episodes though. And then AHL-wise, is there anybody scratched? No, there's not. Goalies look good. Forwards, let's just make sure we got guys like Alto maybe higher in the lineup just because he's got crazy potential to become a really good player. Let's actually move him up to the top line over Holden. We'll move... Who's got good face-off stats that is not a centerman? Out of curiosity, just in case we actually need somebody there. So Holden could actually win face-off. So let's put Holden down the middle, and then Shaw can play there. Lowry... Actually, Lowry's probably going to be higher than Shaw. That's not a bad idea. We do have actually a lot of defenders that are playing on the offensive side of things too, which is not necessarily ideal. But we might have to deal with it. Esposito playing on offense doesn't really make much sense, but he is an enforcer, so it's not like the worst position for him to be playing is on offense. So maybe we'll do that just because we have a lot of defensive prospects anyways. And aside from that, oh, we do have Safronov down there. I wanted Safronov as a depth defenseman. Yeah, I kind of wanted Safronov as the depth D. I might send CC back down then. Just because CC's younger anyway. So yeah, let's move CC back down to the AHL for the time being. Because I think actually I'd prefer Safronov because he's already 24. I know he's a little bit weaker, but let's just do that anyways. And let's go edit lines here. But yeah, I think Safronov as a scratch maybe makes a little bit more sense. Let's go to defense here. We'll get CC back in the lineup in the AHL. And we will readjust this a bit, try and get that chemistry to improve a little bit. Which right now does not seem to be very easy. Yeah, it's not very easy. We might honestly just keep it like this, to be honest. Yeah, let's just go with that, sure. And then goaltending-wise is fine. So everything should be set up the way we want to. Alto should be on the power play likely based on his potential, which he's not on the first unit. He's on the second unit. You know what? Let's just leave him on the second unit for now. He's definitely going to grow regardless, so it should be fine. And that's all our lines for the season, I think. But like I said, we need to maybe think about trading some guys in the AHL if we really want to. Like, we don't have a lot of forward signs, so maybe we just keep it like this. But guys like Brock McGinn shouldn't be technically in the minors. And then there's other guys that are very close to being NHL ready soon too. So, but we'll keep it like this, I think. I think it's good enough. Alright, so that's all good. Like I said, also, we do need a new captain for the season. So, who do you guys think should be captain on this team? Right now, it made Nathan McKinnon the captain, Jakumov's the assistant, and Toffoli an assistant. I think Cameron or McKinnon's the captain. The other one will be an assistant. And then we probably want a defensive assistant captain. So, maybe somebody like Justin Falk, because he's been here for a while. So, let me know what you guys think on that. I think it should be either Cameron or McKinnon as the captain, the other one's the assistant, and Falk is another assistant. But I'll do that obviously next episode if you guys remind me. Aside from that, let's get through the preseason, and then we'll take a look at what teams' lines are looking like for 2016-17. Alright, so only 4 preseason games, so not too bad. We will actually, let's just go to simulate to start a regular season on this part. We don't really care too much about the preseason in general, but let's just see. Also, we got to have a conversation with our coach and see what he thinks about our roster going into the season. Obviously, he's probably going to say we're a little bit weaker, but I think he should say we're still a playoff team based on our offense. But from a preseason standpoint, we will go with 5v5 focused, just because. And season goal, let's see what he's got to say. Yeah, he says this team's good enough to compete for the playoffs, so this team should be a playoff-bound team again. But obviously, it depends on that young defensive core for sure, I think. We have good goaltending to back it up, and we have a good forward group, of course, as well. So let's just get through this preseason, and then we'll take a look at some lines and see what the AI is rocking for teams. Hopefully, there's some really crazy lineups around the league, because that'd be kind of cool. All right, so let's first see how our preseason went, just because we didn't actually see that. So our preseason was inconsistent. First 2 games were good. The last 2 games were not good, but it doesn't really matter that much at the end of it. All right, let's take a look at some lines around the league just to see what the AI teams are running going into the season, so we know what we might be going up against if we do face off against one of these teams in the playoffs this coming season. All right, so what are teams looking like for 2016-17? Where is the view lines? There it is. What are some of these teams looking like? So starting off with the Anaheim Ducks, let's actually just remove my face so you guys can see all the details just in case. But here's what the Ducks are running now. It's a top line of Foligno, Getzlav, and Bobby Ryan. So kind of weird that Corey Perry's been demoted more to a second line guy, but still some familiar faces on this Anaheim team, but they've definitely gone through some changes like Peter Holland's on the 4th line, that type of thing. And then from a defensive standpoint, they still have that young defensive core, kind of like Gardner, Manson, Schultz. They brought in Travis Hamonic in free agency. I saw that. They drafted this guy as well, who looks pretty solid. So that defensive core is coming along. Not too bad. And then goaltending, Henrik Lundqvist is there as well at 34. I forget, how did he do with Anaheim? Because he's been with them for a year now. Not as good as he was with the Rangers, of course, but definitely a solid season it looked like last year. Didn't make the playoffs, but obviously the Lundqvist, or the King, I should say, is looking pretty good. Grubauer's there as a backup still. And then from a scratch perspective, just a bunch of defenders. All right. Atlanta, do they have Panarin in the lineup? The answer is no. Oh, no, they do. They got Panarin signed. That's good. So maybe they offloaded somebody that is making a lot of cap hit. But Panarin was signed to only a 1-year deal at 1.6. So maybe they got also a bargain of a deal, but yeah, Panarin might be getting walked to free agency relatively quick, which is interesting. So we'll see what ends up happening with that Panarin situation. But he gets re-signed, but he's playing 4th line over Jared Boll. I don't understand that logic whatsoever, but I'm not going to question things. But Atlanta still looks like a pretty good team, or Winnipeg at this point, you should say. Defensive core looks good. Goaltending looks pretty solid. It's not the craziest, I guess. Pavlik's a bit of overrated goalie at times. Neuwirth as the backup. Galchenyuk's a scratch. Goof. That's a bit weird. Boston. Yeah, Boston's looking pretty good. Datsuk's getting to play with Brad Marchand and Tomo Ruutu, who was also brought in via free agency. So you can see what I mean about good face-off men, because Bergeron 92 on the draw. You go down to Datsuk, he has 93 face-offs. So those guys should win a lot of face-offs in that top 6, which means maybe a lot more offensive chances for their top 6 to score goals. Then from a defensive standpoint, they look pretty good. It's a bunch of random people, but it's still very good. Yandel, Boychuk, Chalmerson, Weidman. Yeah, that's good. And then, of course, they should still have Tuukka Rask. Yep, they still have Tuukka Rask. So that's a very good defensive team and very solid offensive team, too. So a little bit weak maybe with Nick Hagman still playing at 36 years old, but damn, that's a good team in Boston. Buffalo. Vanek, Umberger, and Turris is a top line, all right. This is a very weird-looking team. Definitely a Buffalo-esque team when you think about it, just because it's kind of a bunch of mid-players when you think about it. There are some good players on there, though, too, obviously, but kind of a mid-team on paper. Then from a defensive standpoint, Morgan Riley's actually going to get a chance to play this season, which is exciting for the Buffalo Sabres, because since his rookie year, he's barely played. So we'll see what he ends up doing for them this season. But he's getting to play with that other young defenseman, Brzgalov. Tyler Myers is dropping off due to morale, which is kind of weird. But it's not a bad defensive core. And then goaltending, they did bring in Semyon Varlamov in free agency. How much did he get paid? 1-year deal at 4.7. So it's only for 1 year. All right. And Jonathan Baker, who they brought in from Chicago, is getting scratched again. This poor guy, he just cannot find a way to stay in the lineup here. He played 1 game last season with the Blackhawks as a scratch. And, yeah, after that, he has not played since. Damn. Okay. The Calgary Flames, looking still pretty good. Sedin, Backlund, LaBarbera, Stajan, Kuznetsov, Palat. Ryan Smith, our former boy, is on that 4th line, and that looks disgusting. And, yeah, you can see why I didn't pay him that $2 million, just because, obviously, playing him in a 4th line spot is kind of weird. I don't think it would have made sense to play him in a top 6 role either, especially at his age, because he's going to drop off throughout the season. He could be in the low 70s by the end of this year, so, but he does join our rival. Defensively, still looks strong. Josh Morrissey's now in Calgary. I don't think he was in Calgary last year when we played them. So he's making the NHL this season? Yes, he is. Damn. So the Calgary Flames, they beat us last year in the conference finals, lost in the cup finals to the Penguins. They have Josh Morrissey now in their lineup. That's insane. He was playing for the Abbotsford Heat. Damn, man. That's a really good pickup now. Damn, that's huge. And then from a goaltending perspective, they have Jonas Hiller still and James Reimer, who they also signed. So Calgary's looking pretty good. Carolina. Penner, Charpentier, Toulouse-D. It's not the craziest team. They do have some okay depth, I guess, but offensively looks kind of strange. Defensively, it's not that bad. And then goaltending-wise, Cam Ward's still there, of course. All right, Chris Kreider getting scratched. Goddamn, man. I hate it when I don't know what to do with that stuff. Chicago still looking really strong, which is kind of surprising because they've lost some faces, but they've still held on to that most of that top 6, including Bufflin, who is now making 5.3. Ribeiro's still there. Damn, man. A lot of clauses in that top 6, too. But Pavel Buchnevich is getting a chance at 21. I don't know if this is his rookie year. No, it's his 2nd year. And then you have Marian Hossa, of course, down there, too. But Chicago still looks like they're paying guys a lot of money right now. All right. So there is Chicago. Colorado. Richards Duchesne stats, and he still looks pretty sick. Yeah, Colorado still looks really good. Goldobin as a 3rd-line guy is a fantastic player to have. Of course, he should probably be higher than Carter Verhaeghe right now, but yeah, this Avs team looks filthy. Looking filthy. Defensively, maybe a little bit more issues, but still good. And then goaltending-wise, it could be better, definitely. Niemi and Grice ain't going to win you a Stanley Cup, probably. Columbus. Looks pretty similar to most years. Gunsel, Zibanejad, Atkinson. That's a nice 2nd line. All right. Yeah, that's good center depth, especially, too, because Vincent Trocheck was the Rookie of the Year last year, wasn't he? Yeah, 40 points last yeyear. And I'm pretty sure he won the Calder. Yeah, he did. So they have very good center depth. That's one thing definitely there in Columbus. Defensively, Muzzin, they did sign Brent Burns in free agency, too. He's getting 5.6 and a no-trade clause throughout the entire 4 years. Yeah, so their defensive core still needs work, so I can understand why they brought in Brent Burns. Goaltending is a bit of a question mark with Elliott and Cheestov, but we'll see. Interesting Blue Jackets team. Dallas. Tatar, Nelson, and Wolski is the top line. They still have a really strong left side, even with Brendan Morrow retiring. Damn. Defensively, looks pretty good, actually. Yeah, that's actually a really good defensive core. Goaltending, Letnin's dropping off a bit. Saros is going to take over a spot eventually, but Dallas is still pretty solid. Detroit, which wasn't really good last year, is starting to get a little bit better. They obviously have a lot of old guys still on this team, but obviously remember they brought in Sean Couturier all these years ago from Chicago as an RFA claim. But they have Filppula, they have Mikanov, or whatever you want to say. It was pronounced as Miknov. I think it's Miknov. But they did sign Tyler Bozak, who's already 30 years old at this point. Damn. But still, Bozak's a nice little addition to this team. Obviously, they lost Datsuk, though. Defensive core still could probably use some work. And then the goaltending is Howard and Kemper. All right. The Florida Panthers, we saw they made a lot of moves in the offseason, and it's still kind of a weird-looking forward group. Not going to lie, I don't think it's a good forward group, despite the moves they made. Frolik, Raquel, and Radulov is their top line. And a lot of aging players like Setaguchi, like Simone Gagne. Yeah, I'm not really a fan of this forward group, to be honest. Especially Johan Franzen being there as a 36-year-old on the bottom line. Damn, man. Defensively, I mean, the defensive core looks okay, actually. But still, The defensive core is still kind of a little bit on the older side of things. Some younger guys are making it, though. And in the goaltending side of things, I mean, Ben Bishop is still there and Jacob Markstrom, but Olli Jokinen actually signed there for free agency, and he's actually not that good anymore at this point, but he will be a depth forward for them, which is kind of exciting to see him return to Florida. From an LA Kings standpoint, they still look pretty good. Obviously, they did lose Kopitar to free agency, though, so that's a massive hole to fill. So that's where Adam Henrique, who was in Toronto last year, he's in Toronto and Minnesota, I should say, comes in to fill. So basically, almost in a way, it was like Henrique for Kopitar when you think about it realistically, but did play a brief bit in Minnesota as well. So Henrique's playing with Brown and O'Sullivan, so I don't expect that top line to do as well, but that's interesting. Alex Burmistrov might get a good chance there because of that situation too. He's still playing with the Gillen. Anders Lee was also brought in. Yeah, he was brought in free agency. That's a nice little pickup in Anders Lee on that second line. All right. From a defensive standpoint, they still look pretty damn good defensively too. Obviously, they're probably paying this defensive core too much. But look at this. This Drew Doughty actually was playing in the AHL last season. Damn. After he was there in the NHL a few years ago. So both Drew Doughtys are playing again. And then goaltending still Jonathan Quick and Magnus Hellberg. Yeah, this Kings team is starting to regress a little bit after their cup date. So, Minnesota. Eric Stahl's signed in Minnesota? Was that this offseason? I think it was. Yeah, it was. So he does join the Minnesota Wild, which is the actual team he played for after a brief stint in New York in real life. So that's kind of neat to see him actually join the Minnesota Wild. It is only on a one-year deal, which is kind of surprising, but maybe he'll head to free agency again. But he's playing with Koivu and Havlat, so that's interesting. Minnesota's got very good center depth too, and winger depth, so that offensive core is great. Defensive core isn't terrible, but isn't crazy. Goaltending, Devin Dubnyk's still there, our former goalie, and Corey Schneider. No depth. Montreal. Sam Gagne is still playing top line now with Tyler Kennedy and Andre Kostitsyn. And then there's Lucic playing on a second line with Alex Killorn and Trent Hunter. Some of these teams are really strange, man. They are very strange. Subban is still there, though, as their best defenseman. Goalies, Carey Price still there at 29 now at this point. And there's their scratches. All right. Nashville. Taylor Hall, Sagan, and Barkov is that top line for the season. That's an interesting top line. I actually really dig that top line. A lot of good youth on that top line. Second line, Hartnell, Ramsey, who they just drafted as well, very high up. So Nashville's getting good, I think. I think they're going to be good. Pritchett on the fourth line. Defensively, Yossi's there at 26 years old. Yeah. Now this is technically Roman Yossi's team because Shea Weber got moved out. And then Rene's still there at 33. Yeah, they're scratching a young defenseman, which I don't like. But yeah, that's a good team there in Nashville. New Jersey, Kovalchuk, Lombardi, and Versteeg. Still a good top line. Rize, Zajac, and Grabowski's the second line. Like I said, some of these teams have like no depth. Other teams have very good depth. The Devils' defensive core needs a lot of work on that right side. And in goaltending, it's solid. Scratches. Coburn probably shouldn't be scratched. He's not going to be really happy with that. The New York Islanders, at this point, Hurdle, Tavares, and Okposo. Solid top line. Suominen, who was the first overall pick, he's getting to play with Nugent Hopkins and Bailey. So they are starting to build up a young top six, which is nice. But yeah, the Islanders might need still a little bit of work, but they're definitely working on it. Their defensive core is relatively young too. So, not that bad. And in goaltending, Rick DiPietro still there at 35. He will be the backup this season. He signed for this last year of his contract, so he'll probably hit the free agency and free them up some cap space. And maybe that will help them actually win a Stanley Cup eventually. But Danielson, our former goalie, of course, is there too. And then David Clarkson's a healthy scratch. Same with Anthony Duclair, which makes sense to real life right now. And then Mike Komisarek. From a Rangers standpoint, Forsberg, Roy, and Kucherov, very good top line. Second line's great too. Gabrick, Dubinsky, and Granlund. Yeah, this Rangers team could definitely still win more cups in this franchise mode. Defensively, Petrie and McDonough. Obviously, we traded Petrie there, which could come back to bite us, but that's a really solid Rangers team. Their goaltending definitely still a little bit of a question mark, obviously, because they did lose Lundqvist a few years ago. But Jonas Enroth being a starter and Dan LaCosta being a backup, I don't know if I would really trust them fully, but maybe that offensive core will help them enough. So, interesting. The Ottawa Senators, Landeskog, Spezza, and Craig Smith. Second line has this Kavanaugh guy playing with Hoffman and Stewart. Yeah, Ottawa ended up getting Chris Tierney. Did they draft him? Yes, they did. I forgot about that. But West is a really good third liner. He probably should be on that top 6, but... Okay, so it's not the worst offensive core, but definitely could use maybe a bit of work. Obviously, Alfredson's long retired and stuff at this point, I think. Defensively, Ekholm and Carlson still looks good. Bouwmeester and Jones looks fantastic. And then Lindholm and De Boer. That's a good defensive core, though. Good depth to it. And then goaltending is a guy named Nieuwendyk and Ilya Brzgalov, so 284s. Scratches, it is Vesa Lorakainen, who's a generated guy. Alright, they do have some solid young talent. Philadelphia. McCulloch, Richards, Giroux, Hemsky, Scheifele, and Carter. Bertuzzi, Strome, and Stone. The fact that Mark Stone's still playing third line is outrageous. He's behind Hemsky and Giroux. But yeah, this is a really good team. They also signed Michael Ryder, which makes no sense really with the right wing depth, but that offensive core is crazy. That means probably they have lack of depth somewhere, right? Not really. The defense is okay at times. They have 3 of 6 good defenders. Brian Lee on a second pair, probably not a great idea, but yeah, this Flyers team actually could do some damage this year. Halak being that starter too that they signed is not a bad option. So yeah, I do expect the Flyers maybe to make it back to the playoffs this year. I don't think they've made it so far in this series so far, though, at this point. The Coyotes. There is Wong, which is technically McDavid, playing with Skinner and Dadonov, who we traded there. Hansel, Cogliano, Neal. Solid second line. Yeah, they actually are building up an okay team there. It's not like, say, the craziest team on paper, but they have some young guys that could jump up still. Like, obviously, Bo Horvat could be a top 6 guy very soon. So, yeah, that's really nice. Defensively, Kronwall, Girardi, Ekman Larson, and Klingberg, Kindle, and Ellerby. Defensive core is pretty solid too. This defensive pairing just makes me think of the Leafs, though. Klingberg and Ekman Larson. And then from a goalie standpoint, Leonard and Mrazek. Alright, not too bad, I guess. Still not great compared to some teams, though. Pittsburgh still looks filthy. Obviously, they won the Cup last year. Malkin, Crosby, Williams, Malone, Stahl, Maroon. Pat Maroon trying to find a way to win a Stanley Cup with them. He just goes wherever the Cup shows up, I guess. And then defensively, Quincy Letang. Yeah, it's not as good as years past, but it's still good. And a Fleury there at 31 years old. Louis Dominguez, the backup. That's realistic as shit. That reminds me of when the, I think it was it the Rangers that did that had Dominguez play some playoff games? I feel like it was Pittsburgh that had Dominguez play some playoff games, but that's just a realistic thing for the Pittsburgh Penguins. They have Fleury as the starter, but they have like some really random backup. Like, for instance, at this point, maybe like Jeff Zakoff. I guess it would be Matt Murray now at this point in real life. But I do remember when they had like Jeff Zakoff playing at 2015-16, I think, or whatever it was. So, just reminds me of those times. San Jose. Couture, Pavelski, and Thornton. Noted golfer Joe Pavelski, I should say, based on his recent golfing performance, if you guys saw that. Ted Goalie as a third-line center, whoever that is. San Jose is definitely not as good as they used to be. Like, they're definitely having that age catch up to them, which means a rebuild is likely on the horizon for them, which is unfortunate, but it is what it is. And then goalies Mike Smith, Anton Forsberg. Scratches, just a bunch of young guys, I guess, that are generated. St. Louis. Huberto, Bacchus, Oshie, Perron, Festerini, Bork. They still look actually pretty damn strong down the middle. Like, Berglund being a third-line center, even after moving out from Sagan, they still look good on the offensive side of things. Defensively, Lundin and Pietrangelo. Ericsson's playing with Shea Weber, so Shea Weber obviously back for his second year in St. Louis, or first full season, I should say. Yeah, that defensive core is still good. Goaltending, maybe a little bit questionable with Pascal Leclerc. But, yeah, that's not a bad team in St. Louis. Tampa. They went to the conference finals last year, lost to Pittsburgh. Tanguay, Stamkos, LeCavalier. Nikita Gusev has made the NHL. That's surprising. He's playing next to Elias Lindholm and Steve Downey. Mitchell, Eller, and some guy named J.C. Sawyer. Yeah, this Tampa team has solid depth as well. Defensively, looks not bad. Hedman and White. Suter was just brought in, so that's a nice little pickup there. Mark Stahl's playing there, too. Yeah, it's a good defensive core. And then goalies, Allmark and Emery. Not bad. Not bad at all. Brian Campbell's a scratch at 37 years old. Goddamn. Poor guy. Toronto, this should be an intriguing team. Goudreau, Kopitar, and Kessel is the top line. That is a great top line. They have obviously simulated bad because they've had bad defensive cores. So do you think their defensive cores is going to look better than it did last year? Or is it going to be a problem still for them this year? Second line has Stempniak, Gotch, and Millman, who's obviously replaced Taylor Hall in that top six. Hansen was brought in as a free agent sign. That's not a bad pickup. Niederreiter's still down there. Kadri's still fourth line, which he probably should be second line. And they do have Vikingstad, who they just drafted 5th overall as well. Yeah, they still have a good amount of young guys as well. Defensively, yeah, I think they still need work on this defensive core. And that's been their main problem, is defense and goaltending. Schultz and Larson as a top pairing, it's questionable. Second pairing, having Gervais and Jacob Slavin. Jacob Slavin's obviously good, but Bruno Gervais, And then Rudolph Trigg, whoever that is, and Luke Shen. Goaltending-wise, they do have Connor Hellebuyck, who's an 89, and also Jake Allen, but Hellebuyck has only made the playoffs one time, I think, with their team. He's never made the playoffs at this point. He's been playing for 2 years now. Yikes. I don't even know how he had a 12-29-10 record with a 908 save percentage. That's actually insane. But look at the goals against average. You could see definitely the Leafs have been allowing too many goals in this series. And it scratches this guy named Anderson's. We head to Vancouver. We're almost done through this. Webb, Kessler, and Sedin. Aside from that, they are kind of lacking a bit of depth. I mean, Schwartz and Bernier are solid, but Vancouver's seen better days. Defensively, it's not terrible in the top 4, but could use work. And in goaltending, Jonathan Bernier, Roberto Luongo is still there at 37 years old at this point. And he still has a modified no-trade clause despite being an 80 overall backup. That's kind of insane. Scratches, Alsner, Uyghur, and Picard. And their last team we got is the Washington Capitals, who won cups early on but haven't since. Ovi, Backstrom, Simmons still together. Fleischman, Johansson's up to a 90. Goddamn. Philly Lano, third line Sexton, Eakin, and Moss. They don't have as good a depth as they used to, for sure, too, but still have a really nice top 2 pairing, like with Orlov and Carlson. Yeah, they definitely still have some good players. Holtby's there, of course, and Erzberg as the backup. So, interesting teams there for 2016-17. Obviously, I don't know how good we compare to those teams. I think offensively, we matched up with a lot of teams well. Defensively, it needs to get maybe some growth in it from the prospects, but it's not as strong as it was last year, but it could still simulate good because we have good goaltending. So, anyways, guys, that's going to do it for this episode of Edmonton Oilers Throwback 2010 Franchise Mode. So, in next episode, we will probably make an adjustment maybe with some of the guys in the AHL. Like I said, I don't know if we should keep Brock McGinn for the AHL or we should trade him away. If we don't make any adjustments, we'll probably start up the season in sim and simulate maybe up to halfway point of the season. Really depends on how we get started. But I think our team's looking really good again this year, and I'm excited to see what this young team could do. So, I think down below, and I'll see you guys next time.